we go. All right, we are on Deuteronomy chapter 9. Get my glasses on. Did you say 7? Verse 7. And then my break is at 12.
We actually need to do MacArthur for 1 to 6.
Oh, thank you.
I'm getting it.
Okay. Some things while she's looking that up that I found interesting yesterday was that it was at least 40 more days until they actually entered Canaan. How many times he used the word here was over 50 times in Deuteronomy, because I thought, well, I mean, that in itself is like pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. And then the fact that I kind of felt like this answered Kim's question too, like that it wasn't a reward for Israel that they were able to conquer, but it was because of the evilness of the people in those lands. It was nothing that the Israelites did. I found that interesting. Those were some notes that I had made.
So do you want me to read just 1 through 6?
Yes.
Okay.
Is this still chapter 8 or we're in 9?
We're in chapter 9.
Okay.
Okay, just one sentence overview, 9:1 to 10:11. This part of Moses' speech rehearses the sins of the Israelites at Horeb. Reference Exodus 32.
Okay, so it is, what is that again? I'm sorry.
It's rehearsing the sins of the Israelites at Horeb.
Thank you.
Sure. 9:2, the Anakim. Moses remembered the people's shock when they heard the original report of the 12 spies concerning the size, strength, and number of the inhabitants of Canaan. Therefore, he emphasized that from a purely military and human point of view, their victory was impossible. The fear of the spies and the people focused on the Anakim, a tall, strong people who lived in the land of Canaan. 9:3, a consuming fire. The Lord was pictured as a fire that burned everything in its path. So the Lord would go over into Canaan and exterminate the Canaanites, destroy them quickly. Israel was to be the human agent of the Lord's destruction of the Canaanites. The military strength of the Canaanites would be destroyed quickly. There's a reference to Joshua. Though the complete subjugation of the land would take time. And another reference to Joshua. 9:4, because of my righteousness. 3 times in verses 4 to 6, Moses emphasized that the victory was not because of Israel's goodness, but was entirely the work of God. It was the wickedness of the Canaanites that led to their expulsion from the land. 9:6, a stiff people. Literally, quote, hard of neck. A figurative expression for the stubborn, intractable, obdurate, and unbending attitude of Israel. In verses 7 to 29, Moses illustrated Israel's rebellious attitude and actions toward the Lord. So I have a question on this. He's addressing everything that everybody went through. Is he doing it for the younger Israelites so they have the history, or because
I think so. I think one of our days we studied, it talked about how he was kind of saying to them, listen, this is what your ancestors did. Do not make the same mistakes.
Okay.
The thing is, it's saying, oh, wait a minute, I say it again, it is only because of the wickedness and because of his promise to. Yeah. So this was just all about God's promise, because it says in verse 6, I say it yet again, Jehovah your God is not giving you this good land because you are good, for you are not. You are wicked, stubborn people.
But I made a promise, and because I made that promise, I'm going to follow through
Wow.
with it despite your stupidness.
Wow. That's pretty amazing.
Well, there's somewhere too where God was like, he did something because he had made a promise to David. And he had made this promise to David, and because he made the promise to David, even though whoever he was dealing with didn't deserve it, he honored it because of because of David.
Well, as we read this, we're reading it in our tone of voice. I'd love to know the tone he had in his speeches and addresses he was making. There had to be some inflection of, it's not because of your goodness. Heaven knows that. It's because of, you know what I mean? I can't believe it. Just maybe he did. Just
Because of you all, I struck that rock.
Yeah.
And I don't get to go in there.
And here we go again.
Yeah.
It just seems to me
There had to be
sometimes
some
I think that's
anger or
lacking.
something.
Yeah.
What, Kathy?
There had to be some little bit of anger or, I mean, surely disappointment, but
Animosity too. Like, and you people are going in there and I'm not. Like, how frustrating, and how, it would be hard. Woo.
But he didn't know that most likely he gets to come back with the two witnesses. You know what I mean? Like who would have, like, even though he didn't get to go into the promised land, they didn't know where he was buried. Jude says that Michael fought for his body. And so then, God does kind of honor that faithfulness, we think, in Revelation when he gets to be one of the two witnesses.
Yes.
but he's not going to know that,
He didn't know it then.
at that point, like, okay, I get to come back and
Yeah.
When I think
He
of
did.
Moses,
Go ahead.
it makes me think of Charlton Heston in the Ten Commandments. Because when he came down off that mountain and they had that golden calf, he pitched a fit. Threw the tablets down and broke them. So I think Moses had a lot of attitude.
I know. I remember watching that and thinking when he broke those tablets, like, oh, I can't
Yeah.
believe you did that. God just gave those to you and you broke them. I mean, and I wasn't like that. I didn't grow up in the church. So but then he went up there and got another set.
I was like, calm down, Moses. Well, then I wonder too, because God spoke to him, did he have some insight to what was coming?
Wow. Yeah.
We don't know. We probably have it all wrong. I keep thinking that all the time. Like, we're always trying to figure stuff out, but we're probably gonna get to heaven and be like, oh, yeah, no, I was way off. That's not even what happened.
I think Moses so knew that God, how much he loved. And in his heart, he knew. He knew.
Well, and think about too, like, when Moses came down off the mountain, they had just married God. That marriage had just been created, and Moses left for a few brief moments of time on the map of life, and they had an affair and started to create with the idols. No wonder he was angry. And it goes to show you too that the sheep need a shepherd.
Yeah.
Left on our own, we wander off. I'm sorry.
The sheep
Cindy.
have to want to be led, though, too.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Cindy, did you go all the way through 6?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then we are at 7 through 12. Does that work for everybody? Would someone like to read 7 through 12? It's very short.
I'll read it.
Thank you.
Remember this and never forget how you provoked the Lord your God to anger in the desert. From the day you left Egypt until you arrived here, you have been rebellious against the Lord. At Horeb, you aroused the Lord's wrath so that he was angry enough to destroy you. When I went up the mountain to receive the tablets of stone, the tablets of the covenant that the Lord had made with you, I stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. I ate no bread and drank no water. The Lord gave me 2 stone tablets inscribed by the finger of God. On them were all the commandments the Lord proclaimed to you on the mountain out of the fire and on the day of the assembly. At the end of the 40 days and 40 nights, the Lord gave me the 2 stone tablets, the tablets of the covenant. Then the Lord told me, go down from here at once, because your people, whom you brought out of Egypt, have become corrupt. They have turned away quickly from what I commanded them and have made a cast idol for themselves.
Dun, dun, dun.
So he knew before he got down there.
God told him. God
Yeah.
told him what they did.
He probably stomped the whole way down there.
Probably did.
I wonder if he got angrier the closer he got. That would be me. Like, I would be like, the further I would go. I'm working on it though. All right. Cindy, we'll go back to you with John again, if you don't mind. Get back in our normal order.
Nine seven. Remember, Moses challenged Israel to call to mind the long history of their stubbornness and provocation of God, which had extended from the time of the Exodus from Egypt for 40 years until the present moments on the plains of Moab. 9:10, the finger of God. God himself had written the 10 commandments on the 2 tablets of stone at Mount Sinai. Finger is used in an anthropomorphic sense.
What is
And
that?
that's it. Well, when I see anthro, I think of anthropology. I don't know.
Do you want me to look it up?
Yeah. A-N
Hold on. A-N.
T-H-R
Yep.
O-P
Yep.
O-M-O-R
Oh, wait. O-P-O-M-O-R.
P-H-I-C.
P-H-I-C. Here we go. Relating to or characterize, having human characteristics. So like a monkey or ape has human characteristics. So he's saying the finger, what did it say again?
Is used in an anthropomorphic sense.
So a human characteristic.
And that's all I have. I don't go again until 9:14.
Oh, that was short. Kathy? Are you ready?
Mine actually goes from 9:7 clear to 10:11.
Oh, can you see sometimes in the reading of that, you can kind of tell like where he's at. Embolded. Like sometimes he'll put the embolded verses.
Well, about halfway through, he kind of references verse 14, but before you get to there, he references verses 23 and 24 and 22. So he's kind of like all over the place.
Where'd you say he goes to in 10?
10, 11.
Oh yeah, that's clear down. Oh, shoot. Well, let me read Tony then, and then we'll come back to him. The 7 through 12, the last comment led Moses to offer an extended illustration. Wait, the last comment. What was the last comment? Do not say to yourself, the Lord brought me in here to take possession of this land. He was fulfilling a promise. Okay. The last comment led Moses to offer an extended illustration of the Israelites' rebellious behavior. He said, remember and do not forget. Moses wanted to drive home how easy it was for God's people to go off the rails, even in the face of his constant mercy and faithfulness. He reminded them of the quintessential example of Israel's sins, the golden calf incident in Exodus 32, 1 through 35. Israel had indulged in idolatry and debauchery, breaking God's commandments while Moses was still on the mountain receiving them. That's how quickly. I never thought about that. They were breaking the commandments while he was receiving them.
They probably couldn't wait for him to get up around the corner, headed up the mountain.
Wow. All right, Kathy, go ahead and read. I don't know what we should do here because then it goes on to the golden calf. Should we read the rest of 10 or the rest of 9 and then let you do Worsby at that point? I think maybe that would be the smarter way.
Yeah, I think maybe that's a good idea.
All right. Furthermore, the Lord said to me, I have seen this people. See God speaking directly to Moses. And behold, it is a stubborn people. Let me alone, that I may destroy them and blot their name from under heaven. And I will make you a nation mightier. Wait a minute. Furthermore, the Lord said to me, I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stubborn people. Let me alone, that I may destroy them and blot out their name from under heaven, and I will make of you a nation mightier and greater than they. Oh. So I turned and came down from the mountain, and the mountain was burning with fire. So God was like, let me just kill them all, and from you, Moses, I'll make a nation. So Moses must have bidded for them. He must have interceded. And the 2 tablets of the covenant were in my 2 hands, and I looked, and behold, you had sinned against the Lord your God. You had made yourselves a golden calf. You had turned aside quickly from the way that the Lord had commanded you. So I took hold of the 2 tablets, and I threw them out of my 2 hands and broke them before your eyes. Then I lay prostrate before the Lord as before 40 days and 40 nights. So that's 40 days and 40 nights. I neither ate bread nor drank water because of all the sin that you had committed in doing what was evil in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger. For I was afraid of the anger and hot displeasure that the Lord bore against you, so that he was ready to destroy you. But the Lord listened to me that time also. And the Lord was so angry with Aaron that he was ready to destroy him. And I prayed for Aaron also at the same time. Then I took the sinful thing, the calf that you made, and I burned it with fire and crushed it, grinding it very small until it was as fine as dust. And I threw the dust of it into the brook that ran down from the mountain. At Taberah also, and at Massah, and at Kibroth Hattava, you provoked the Lord to wrath. And when the Lord sent you from Kadesh Barnea, saying, go up and take possession of the land that I have given you, then you rebelled against the commandment of the Lord your God and did not believe him or obey his voice. You have been rebellious against the Lord from the day I knew you. So I lay prostrate before the Lord for these 40 days and 40 nights, because the Lord said he would destroy you. Kind of reminds me like a pre-Jesus, because Jesus being in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. And I prayed to the Lord, or Noah being on the boat. I prayed to the Lord, O Lord God, Do not destroy your people and your heritage, whom you have redeemed through your greatness, whom you have brought out of Egypt with a mighty hand. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Do not regard the stubbornness of this people, or their wickedness, or their sin, lest the land from which you brought us say, because the Lord was not able to bring them into the land that he promised them. Do not regard the stubbornness of this people, or their wickedness, or their sin, lest the land from which you brought us say, Egypt, because the Lord was not able to bring them into the land he promised them, and because he hated them, he has brought them out and put them to death in the wilderness. For they are your people and your heritage, whom you brought out by your great power and by your outstretched arm. That was powerful.
Did we? I think we probably already discussed this, but there's a significance in the 40 days, 40 nights, because like you said, there was twice here. There was Jesus in the desert, and there was Noah.
There's
on the
Jesus
ark.
after resurrection
Yeah,
too, 40 days. There's definitely number connections. Crazy guy that I watch in the morning does a lot with number connections. And that rabbi, did you guys see the one I sent you guys? About the number 490?
yeah.
You know, like all those connections. There definitely is numbers. Let me see if I can find what 40. I have a book somewhere. Let me just do a quick search. Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay. The discipline of God. Moses was addressing a new generation, but they needed to hear this part of the message and realize that they were sinners just like their ancestors. The theme expressed bluntly in 9:24. You have been rebellious against the Lord from the day that I, the Lord, knew you or chose you. God called Abraham and led him to the promised land, but then he fled to Egypt to escape a famine. No sooner were the Jews delivered from Egypt than they began to complain about the way God led them and fed them. The scenery in the drama of life of faith may change, but the actors and the script are pretty much the same. God blesses, we enjoy the blessings, then we rebel against his disciples and miss the blessing he planned for us. In his review of Israel's history of rebellion, Moses started with their worship of the golden calf at Mount Sinai, and then simply mentioned the places where they rebelled on the journey from Sinai to Kadesh Barnea. After that, he declared the nation's unbelief and rebellion at Kadesh Barnea, followed by a second reminder of the episode of the golden calf. Moses didn't follow a strict chronological account of all the events in Israel's history, but emphasized their two greatest sins: the worship of the golden calf at Sinai and the refusal to enter the land at Kadesh Barnea. Israel committed a very great sin when they worshiped the golden calf. Behind them was the history of their deliverance from Egypt, a demonstration of the grace and power of the Lord, and yet they rebelled against their Redeemer. Israel was the people of God, redeemed by his hand, and yet they manufactured a new God. Before them was Mount Sinai, where they had seen God's glory and holiness demonstrated, and from which they received the law of the Lord. In that law, God commanded them to worship him alone and not to make idols and worship them. They had accepted the law and twice promised to obey. And yet they broke the first and second commandments by making and worshiping an idol, and the seventh commandment by engaging in lustful revelry as part of their worship. Impatience and unbelief prompted Israel's great sin at Mount Sinai, for Moses had been on the mountain with the Lord for 40 days and nights. Aaron should have opposed their request for a new God, but instead he compromised and went along with their demands, hoping it would bring peace to the camp. Imagine the first high priest making an idol. Moses had given his brother authority to act in his absence. That's in verse 14. And Aaron, I don't remember reading that in verse 14. Maybe it's going back to the Exodus, where it referenced Exodus for that.
What did he say was in 14?
It says he gave Aaron the authority to act in his absence. And up there where I read about it, it talked about Moses on the mountain for the Lord for 40 days and 40 nights. It's referencing Exodus 24. And then down here where it says he gave Aaron the authority, it says verse 14. So I'm guessing that's coming out of Exodus, because I don't read it here in 14. And Aaron could have rallied the tribal leaders and urged Israelites to obey the Lord, but he wanted to please the people and avoid conflict. Centuries later, Pontius Pilate would make the same mistake when he obeyed the crowd that wanted Jesus to be crucified. That's in Mark. Never underestimate the importance of spiritual leadership that encourages obedience to the word of God. Aaron failed God, who had appointed him as high priest. He failed his brother, who was depending on him to guide the nation. He failed the people, who desperately needed strong spiritual leadership. When Moses confronted him, Aaron tried to excuse his way of sin by blaming the people. All he did was take their golden jewelry and throw it into the fire, and out came a calf. And that's in Exodus. Moses spent another 40 days and nights on the mountain, interceding for Aaron and the people. God was ready to slay Aaron, wipe out the nation, and begin a new nation with Moses. But Moses prayed for Aaron and the people and refused God's offer to make him the father of a new nation. Moses faced this same test at Kadesh Barnea, and again put the glory of God and the good of the people ahead of his promotion, ahead of personal promotion, and that's found in Numbers. Moses was more concerned with the glory of God and his reputation before the pagan nations, for he knew that the fear of God had to go before Israel if they were to conquer the land and claim their inheritance. We can't help but admire Moses as the leader of God's people. He spent 40 days on the mountain learning how to lead the people in their worship of God, and then he spent another 40 days fasting and praying, interceding for a nation that complained, resisted his leadership, and rebelled against the Lord. But leaders are tested just as followers are tested, and Moses passed the test. He showed that his great concern wasn't his own fame or position, but the glory of God and the good of the people. In fact, he was willing to die for the people rather than see God destroy them. A true shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. After reviewing Israel's great sin at Sinai, Moses mentioned Israel's rebellion. Let me start again. After reviewing Israel's great sin at Sinai, Moses mentioned Israel's repeated rebellions on the way to Kadesh Barnea, and that's in 22. At Taberah, the people complained about their hardships, and God sent fire that consumed some of the people on the outskirts of the camp. That's in Numbers. I got a note here. The outskirts of the camp was where the mixed multitude lived, the non-Jewish people who had left Egypt with Israel. According to Numbers 11:4, it was this crowd that caused the problem, just as unsaved people and carnal believers create problems in churches today. However, the Jews shouldn't have listened to them and joined them in their complaining. I don't think I realized that.
Can you repeat that again?
Where it talks about the outskirts of the camp, it says, the outskirts of the camp was where the mixed multitude lived, the non-Jewish people who had left Egypt with Israel. And that's referenced in Exodus 12:38.
Oh, I was gonna say,
Accord-
was that here? It didn't say that here, just in Exodus.
Yeah,
Okay.
according to Numbers 11:4, it was this crowd that caused the problem, just as unsaved people and carnal believers create problems in churches today. However, the Jews shouldn't have listened to them and joined them in their complaining.
The Numbers 11:4 is where that's at.
Yes.
I'm gonna look it up real quick. Now the rabble that was among them had a strong craving, and the people of Israel also wept again and said, "Oh, that we had meat to eat. Remember the fish we ate in Egypt that cost nothing, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic? But now our strength is dried up, and there is nothing at all but this manna to look at." What was the other reference they had about the
It,
outskirts?
it was Exodus 12:38. I have that here.
Okay.
Many other people went with them, as well as large droves of livestock, both flocks and herds. So I didn't realize there was other people that went with them that weren't Jews. I don't think I realized that.
So maybe
Yeah,
like some
I
of the
didn't either.
Egyptians went with them and they would not have been slaves. They would have had all the goods. I could see that being because I feel like if you're a slave, like aren't you grateful for your freedom? But if it wasn't necessarily the Jews that were ungrateful, but the people that went with them who had not been slaves, their life would have been a lot easier.
And then their attitude rubs off on the Jews.
Yeah.
They start to, complain with them.
Yeah, that mob mentality is very powerful. I saw that during COVID.
Yeah. Then the people who complained to Moses begged him to pray for them, and God listened to Moses and stopped the judgment. Taberah means burning, and the name should remind all of us that it's a sin to complain. And there are references to Philippians and Corinthians. At Massa, the Jews complained because they were thirsty. So Moses struck the rock, and God provided water abundantly. That's in Exodus. Massa means testing and is joined with Meribah, which means quarreling. Kibroth Hattaavah means graves of lust, and refers to the time Israel became weary of the manna and craved meat to eat. That's in Numbers.
What's the reference on that? Numbers
11:4.
and okay, and that word means lust. Kabra-
Yeah, Kibroth means graves of lust.
Thank you.
God sent flocks of quail over the camp of Israel, and all the people had to do was knock the birds down, dress them, cook them, and eat them. It was the old Egyptian appetite asserting itself again, the flesh rebelling against the spirit. While the people were eating the meat, God's judgment fell, and he sent a plague to the camp. So he gave them what they asked for, but he sent a plague along with it. And it has a reference to Psalms there. Sometimes God's greatest judgment is to let us have our own way, and a reference to Romans. Finally, Moses.
I'm sorry, could you repeat? What did he send a plague along with?
With the meat, when he sent the quail with the meat, because they were complaining that they wanted meat. While the people were eating the meat, God's judgment fell, and he sent a plague to camp. So he gave them what they asked for, and he sent a plague along with it.
Oh, does it give a reference for that?
I didn't realize that.
I didn't either.
Psalm 106:15.
106:15. God sent a plague with the meat. Wonder what that was.
Let's look it up.
Okay.
Psalms
Mine says, so he gave them what they asked for, but sent a wasting disease upon them.
Oh,
I don't know what the wasting disease was.
Maybe we're heading to Exodus next.
Wonder if, I wonder if Arthur has a, let me look here. What I say it was 106:15.
Yeah.
It just says the Jews forgot what God had most recently done on their behalf, but remembered the basics of life that Egypt provided and doubted they would have water in the future or food. Doesn't say anything about the plague.
Exodus 32, look that up. Because mine says they tested God on numerous occasions and he punished them severely. He gave them what they wanted, but their selfish cravings ended in sickness. If not for the intercessory prayer of Moses, God would have destroyed them for their idolatry. Exodus 32. Yet their rebellion continued. They refused to enter the land that he promised them. He sentenced them to die in the desert. 106.
32 what?
It just says chapter 32.
Oh,
I think it's notable that God offered Moses a chance to have his promises of for Moses's lineage to inherit the promised land instead of these wicked people, and Moses turned them down.
Exactly. You know what, Kim? That's a
I
good
thought that's
point. No wonder he
Yeah.
was angry at them. Because of you, I'm not going. Because he could have killed them. He could have allowed God to kill them all off, had his own people, and been allowed to go into the promised land.
Well, but it's to me, it's still though, he turned down. I'm sure he was angry at the people, but he still wanted this for them. He want so more than he wanted to go into the promised land, more than Moses wanted to go into the promised land himself, and even had the opportunity to do it. He basically prayed and begged God to forgive their wickedness, and that is just very selfless. And I didn't realize that he had that opportunity and turned it down.
That makes that makes his frustration make more sense.
okay.
But he didn't go back and tell the people that. It's not like he's like, I even turned down an opportunity to go
Kill
myself.
you all.
But he didn't, nobody knew the sacrifice that he made in denying himself that.
There probably wouldn't have been any thanks in it anyway. They just said so.
No. You're absolutely right. Well, and God, God doesn't want us to. I don't think. I just think, yeah.
It says Exodus. Okay, so Exodus 16:13 is where it's saying he sent meat, just on a quick Google search. Let me look at that. Exodus 16. I did not know there was a plague sent with that. 16:13. Okay, so then Moses said to Aaron, say to the whole congregation, okay, I'm starting at like 9, of the people of Israel, come near before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling. And as soon as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the people of Israel, they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. And the Lord said to Moses, I have heard the grumbling of the people of Israel. Say to them, at twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread. Then you shall know that I am the Lord your God. And in the evening the quail came up and covered the camp, and in the morning dew lay around the camp. And when the dew had gone up, there was on the face of the wilderness a fine flake-like thing, fine as frost. That's where we got that idea from, on the ground. When the people of Israel saw it, they said to one another, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, "It is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Gather of it, each of you, and eat as much as you can. You shall each take an omer, according to the number of persons that each of you has in his tent." And the people of Israel did so, and they gathered some more, some less. But when they measured it with an omer, whoever gathered much had nothing left over, and whoever gathered little had no lack. Each of them gathered as he could. And then Moses said to them, "Let no one leave any of it over till morning." But they did not listen to Moses. Some left part of it till morning, and it bred worms and stank, and Moses was angry with them. Morning by morning they gathered it, each as much as he could eat, but when the sun grew hot, it melted. On the sixth day, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's not talking about the meat. Oh, it even says here it was like coriander seed in 31.
Yeah, mine says it too.
I never picked up on that before. It doesn't say anything about the meat there. It did not say about the meat. Just says all right, well, I don't want to spend too much time on that, but that's interesting.
Okay. Finally, Moses rehearsed.
I'm gonna need to
great-
sign off these. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye,
See you
Cindy.
Monday.
Finally, Moses rehearsed Israel's great failure at Kadesh Barnea. During the march from Egypt to Kadesh, the Jews had seen the hand of God at work day after day, meeting their every need. But at Kadesh, they felt that God wasn't great enough to give them victory over the nations in Canaan. They had an evil heart of unbelief, which is actually rebellion against the Lord. Unbelief is a sin of the will. It's tempting the Lord and saying, "I will not trust the Lord and do what he commands me to do." The 10 unbelieving spies walked by sight, not by faith, and saw only the problems in the land. Moses, Aaron, Caleb, and Joshua walked by faith and believed that God could defeat any enemy and overcome every obstacle. This review of Israel's sins is quite an indictment, but God never forsook the people of Israel and often forgave them when he should have judged them. He has not dealt with us according to our sins, nor punished us according to our iniquities. And that's found in Psalms. God is always faithful to his promises. When we don't allow him to rule, he will overrule and still accomplish his purposes. However, we will miss the blessings that he planned for us. Every believer and every Christian ministry, whether it be a local church or a parachurch ministry, must trust God to meet their needs a day at a time. If we complain along the way, we're only giving evidence that we don't trust God, but think we know more than he does about what's best for us. When we come to those Kadesh Barnea places in life, when we must claim what God has planned for us and move forward by faith, we must not rebel against God and refuse to trust and obey. If we do, we may find ourselves wandering through life, failing to accomplish what God has planned for us. Claiming our inheritance in Christ is one of the major themes of the book of Hebrews, and the writer uses Israel as the main illustration. Hebrews 3 and 4. That's it.
Interesting here in Numbers 11, that coriander seed, whoever said this was correct. It said the coriander, and it said the people went out and gathered it and ground it in hand mills or beat it like in mortars and boiled it in pots and made cakes of it. So whoever
Yeah, I
said
just
that,
read that in the footnotes in my Bible.
I went back to Exodus, and my Bible has a description of Moses's character, and it's really awesome. it makes me think of my situation.
So in Numbers, if you want to read more on the meat, Numbers 11, I was just wanting to see where the
plague.
yeah, where the plague was.
All right, ladies, I too have to go.
All
I have-
right.
I'm going to Roanoke to visit a friend this weekend. So
Oh, have fun.
thank
All right.
you.
All right. Well, this will conclude the reading of God's word. We'll pick back up with John MacArthur and Tony on Monday on 9, verse 7 through 29. Is that correct?
Yes.
I made myself a little note here.
Verse 13.
Oh, 13.
Yeah.
See, I would have had it wrong.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Kim. Have fun.
Bye,
Safe
Kim.
travels.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Love everybody. Love you. Bye.